Good afternoon. First, I want to offer my condolences to the family of a man killed in an automobile accident last night that involved two Memphis Animal Shelter employees. The two employees were not at fault for the accident and were not seriously hurt, but we are all at city government saddened by the loss. When this winter storm approached Memphis, our number one concern was public safety. And we knew those without shelter were the most vulnerable. We teamed with the Hospitality Hub to operate our primary warming center. And due to demand, we have operated a second center at one of our community centers. MATA has provided free transportation to the warming centers. The hub has hosted over 115 people each day, and our community center has served 75 to 90 people per day. We are very thankful for the support of Constance Abbey in providing 3 meals daily to feed those using the warming centers. In addition, we're thankful to the Union Mission, Salvation Army, and Room at the End, and their 8 partnering churches who likely served hundreds more individuals. Our next goals were to restore power and then water service. Obviously, MLGW and President McGowan have led that effort, and he has been and will give details on that effort. But with respect to water service, I would like to explain the overall challenge. Water pressure is the force applied to water to push it through the pipes. The pressure is created by pumps. MLGW has 9 very large pumping stations and a series of in-line boost pumps and water tanks that are used to create and maintain that pressure. The water is carried in MLGW pipes throughout the city called water mains. Now, within homes and businesses, there are privately owned pipes. First, that carry the water to the faucets and toilets, and 2, that are fire suppression equipment, also known as a sprinkler system. Water pressure is carefully monitored by MLGW at all time, all year long. A massive increase in water usage, such as multiple leaks that occur over a long period of time, can negatively alter the water pressure in the area of the leaks. Right now, we estimate that up to 15% of MLGW customers in Shelby County are without water due to lack of water pressure. Most of the cause of that lack of pressure are the water leaks in privately owned buildings, particularly from fire suppression equipment. Because of the Christmas holiday or because the building is unoccupied, leaks can go undiscovered for a couple of days. Doug can further explain and maybe give an example of the 42 fire protection fixes that MLGW has had to do on private property. Some of the cause of the lack of pressure is the MLGW water mains, most of which have been repaired. MLGW identified and fixed 26 water main breaks, and crews are now working on, I believe, 4 breaks that were identified today. Now, to help those without water, thankfully, MLGW and other organizations are giving out bottled water to drink. But that is not the only challenge faced by these families. Many people in the affected areas are getting water from friends and family in other areas of the city and pouring it into their toilets to provide enough water for what's called a forced flush. Beginning today, we are partnering with the Shelby County Health Department to provide water to those affected areas for their use for a forced flush. This is really important. This is not drinking water. This water has not been treated. It's the same as the water in the fire hydrants, which is safe to touch, but not to drink. So I'll say it one more time. Do not drink this water. It is also not to be used for cooking, bathing, or washing. It's only used for a forced flush. We want to thank Home Depot for generously donating 1,000 5-gallon buckets to help people transport this water back to their homes. Lastly, for my remarks, the AutoZone Liberty Bowl will be played tomorrow as planned with fans. We are currently finalizing those plans and they will be announced later today. Chief Shandell Ryan will give more detail on city operations, but first I'll call up Doug McGowan for MLGW update.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see many of you again today. I want to start my comments today talking just a little bit about our water supply. We have plenty of water. Our myriad of wells are producing a lot of water, and they're sending it, as the mayor said, to our 9 water pumping stations. And those water pumping stations are working very well to push water out into the system. As you've heard me say recently, that is a change from when we had the last water crisis. We have boosted pressures and increased production dramatically just trying to maintain the pressures that we have had here. That's something that a year ago we could not have done without the investments that we have made over the last 2 years in our water system. So, as bad as it has been, it could have been significantly worse if we had not made those investments. So people today that had low pressure might have had no water at all. So the investments we're making are working. It's not nearly enough. We have to continue the work, but I just wanted to note that we have plenty of water. We're pushing it out in volume, and something we couldn't do before. We need to now work on distribution, because this is a crisis of water distribution, as the mayor talked about with all the pipes that are out there. The breaks on private property bleed out water pressure. The breaks in water mains bleed out water pressure. And that means that people who are downstream of those breaks just can't get any water. There is, I want to say to all of you today, room for optimism. We are moving in the right direction. I could not tell you that yesterday. I could not tell you that last night, but today I'm telling you there's room for optimism because we are making progress. Some areas of the city that have not had any water are beginning to get a flow of water. Some areas of the city that have seen low pressure are starting to see those pressures start to come up. Largely that's because we are refilling all of the water mains that were emptied out because of the breaks. So our teams have been doing a lot of work to allow us to start refilling those mains. As the mayor said, we've had just about 30 broken mains. Most of those have been repaired. I know of 4 that are underway right now. Just so you know, I have 20 crews ready to hop on any fire main break that we have, or excuse me, any water main break that we have. So we have plenty of resources to make sure that we get on those quickly to avoid any loss of pressure. The mayor talked about fire protection. So far, 42 fire protection systems have been isolated and secured. Now, a lot of folks may not understand. They see a sprinkler in their apartment building. We are a very logistics-heavy community. Many of these warehouses have very large, up to 1 million square feet, kinds of areas that need to be protected. To give a sense of scale, at least one of the fire protection systems we shut off was a 10-inch diameter main. That's as large as some of the water mains we have under the street. So if you can imagine a 10-inch diameter main under very high pressure, pushing a lot of water out, that's what really causes the dramatic loss of pressure in our systems. Also, our teams have worked to secure water for about 1,000 residential and commercial customers because of broken and burst pipe calls. We have about another 229 today that we are working on. We have about 30 crews out there actively turning off water to people who are experiencing leaks so that they can get those repaired. But it's not just the work of our teams doing all that securing of those water, it's the active participation of all the residents in our community. We asked everybody to conserve, and your conservation is actually helping people who've delayed doing their laundry, people who've avoided doing tasks that require a lot of water. We appreciate that. I also want to thank the business owners. Last night I asked people who are heavy on office employees to have people work remotely as much as possible. That really helped us avoid the peak this morning. As things continue to change today and as we evaluate the system, I asked business owners to do that for 2 days. If I can roll that back this afternoon or this evening, I will definitely do that as conditions improve. But I want to thank everybody for helping us with that. I know the Memphis Chamber of Commerce pushed that message out, as did Memphis Tomorrow. So thanks to everybody who helped us. Yesterday and today, as the mayor said, our teams and our partners have distributed about 2,500 cases of water. We'll evaluate the need to again do that tomorrow, and we'll be ready and able to distribute more water tomorrow. It's not just the MLGW team, though. There is a whole community who has come together to allow us to do that. Our partners at TVA have sent several trucks our way filled with water. Mr. Ron Kent and Ajax Distributing was instrumental in getting us water on site immediately yesterday. Mayor Harris and the Shelby County Office of Emergency Management provided us several pallets of water. The Reeves Law Firm has provided us some resources to acquire more water. Amazon, our partners, have sent several trucks of water our way so that we'll have them on hand in the future should we need them. The Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Lemoyne Owen chapter, without prompting, just stopped by yesterday and dropped off several pallets of water, and we're very thankful for that. And I want to call one individual, Miss Mary Camara, who drove up from Olive Branch with her car and dropped off as much water as she could bring in her car, which was a really nice gesture showing the collaboration and partnership and kinds of neighbors that we really have here. I want to finish by saying a couple of things. While there is room for optimism today, and we are heading in the right direction, this recovery will not happen all at once, nor will it happen everywhere at once. Because of the physical location of our water plants and because of the physical location of the water breaks, there will be certain neighborhoods that come online later than sooner. There will be other areas that enjoy full water pressure earlier. That is simply a matter of physics and not a matter of where we choose to do work. I can't predict where the breaks will happen, and I can't determine where the neighborhoods are that are affected. It's literally where the breaks happen and where the pumping station is. So I want folks to know that the recovery will come in stages and in various areas of the city, but every customer matters. And we are working, as we always have, to prioritize customers that have no water to try to get water to them as quickly as we possibly can. And then we will work on increasing the pressures throughout the rest of the system. But just as the system didn't go down all at one time, it won't come back all at one time. There are a number of factors, where the breaks are, where the pumping stations are, and even gravity. There are areas of the city that are higher elevation than lower, and that means it takes more effort to get the water up the hill, especially in the northern part of Shelby County where we have water tanks. Many of those tanks were depleted. We have to fill them back up, and they help us with pressure in that part of the service area. So just want to let everybody know that we're heading in the right direction. It won't happen all at once. Bear with us, and fingers crossed that we will continue to see the success throughout the course of the day. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Ryan for some more comments.
Thank you, Mayor Strickland and Chief President McGowan. Good afternoon. My task today is to give some updates about city closures and programming changes that we're having throughout the city. I'd like to start by thanking the City of Memphis employees for responding to emergencies throughout this entire weekend. We've had men and women to work during the holidays to ensure that we were best able to reopen city buildings and provide services today. For the city libraries, we have 5 Memphis public libraries that will be closed due to weather-related issues. That's the Whitehaven, Poplar White Station, Randolph, Bartlett, and East Shelby locations. For Memphis parks, we have 8 community centers that are closed today. That's Burt Ferguson, Bethel LaBelle, Davis, Ed Rice Community Center, Katy Sexton, Whitehaven, Orange Mound, and Hickory Hill Community Centers are all closed. And the Orange Mound Senior Center will not open today as well. We are also not opening the aquatics centers today, and the Woolbright and Frazier tennis courts are closed today as well. The Memphis Public Links golf courses will reopen on tomorrow. Due to water pressure issues, some of the City of Memphis Parks Division winter break camps locations have been moved, but we are going forward today with those camps. The participants have been notified and they are actually in camp as we speak. For our taxes, the Memphis Treasury Office is open today. You can make a payment online at pay@901.com or by phone. You can contact them at 901-636-7200. Their hours today are 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. For the Memphis courts, the municipal courts are located at 201 Poplar are closed today due to the weather pressure. In the Memphis Police Department, the inclement weather policy for crashes is now over. As I've stated before, for solid waste services, we are operational today. We started with Monday collections and we'll be working throughout the week. Those who were missed on Friday will be collected during overtime, and we expect to receive full completion of the week by December the 31st of this year. MATA resumed their regular bus service today. We do have warming centers open today and tonight. They will be closed tomorrow due to the uptick in the weather. But tonight we will have 2 locations still available. That's the Hospitality Hub at 590 Washington Avenue and Dave Wells Community Center located at 915 Chelsea Avenue. Public Works will begin repairing potholes on the streets. So as we see those and you as citizens see those, please feel free to report those through 311 or by using the See Click Fix app. And that's all I have today. I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Any questions?
We have a Grizzlies game tonight, the Liberty Bowl, like you mentioned, tomorrow. I mean, it's kind of a bad look for Memphis across the country. We're probably having people cancel their tickets. Can you speak to the lost dollars in our economy just from restaurants being closed and people canceling their plans?
Well, first of all, the AutoZone Liberty Bowl is not being canceled. It's going to be played, as I said, and I'll remind you, if you don't know, that I think it was November, because of a water main break, the Nashville Predators, their National Hockey League team, canceled 2 games. So sometimes these natural disasters happen and you have to adjust. I believe the Grizzlies are supposed to announce today around 2 o'clock or so if they're going to play tomorrow. No, it's tonight. Oh, the game is actually going to happen. The announcement at 2 is going to be whether fans are allowed.
But that still affects our economy. Restaurants have had to close. No. Fans won't be in the neighborhoods dining. Can you speak to the dollars lost?
Yeah, I don't know how much it is, but it's unfortunate, especially coming out of the pandemic where 2 years that restaurants were really hurt. They have boomed since the pandemic ended, and it's unfortunate that here right around the first of the year, people are shutting down and can't earn a living. We're hoping to shorten that amount of time and hopefully hit the new year with a bang.
If you don't mind, just for residents out there, for customers with their bills, do you
Sure. So everybody's obviously billed for the water consumption that they have, and dripping should not have a material impact. We did turn off the notifications that we have. You know, sometimes people will get a notification, hey, it appears that you have higher than usual water consumption. We turned that off because we did ask you to start dripping, and we didn't want to go out, have you checking things. So I don't know that it'll have a material impact on your water. Very likely, the bill shouldn't have a significant change because of the reduced water pressure, the reduced voluntary water use. So I understand the question. Certainly with respect to gas and electric, you are only charged for what you are using. And so to the extent that you didn't use those or conserve those, your bill should not be affected. We did suspend any cutoffs due to non-payment during this period of time for the cold and also for the water, just because we wanted to prioritize our crews to securing leaks to the extent we could.
You mentioned things are looking better. The biggest question, of course, everyone's asking again is what's the timeline here? So
Sure.
Give us any kind of timeline as to boil water ending and having your water back.
That's a really good question. So I do not want to promise a deadline that I cannot meet, but I will say this. Over history, the way that this has typically happened is once you have found and fixed all the leaks, it takes a couple of days for the system to stabilize, for all those water mains to be filled and for the pressure to stay stable. Then is the time that we are allowed by the regulators to take a water sample. And we have to do that in successive days in order for them to be sure that there's no issues with the water. I want to say we sample every day, and right now we haven't found any issues with the water. But by regulation, when we hit low pressure, we have to issue the boil water alert. So by history, it's a few days after you get the leaks fixed for the system to stabilize, then a couple of days for us to get the water samples, and then we can lift that advisory. That also may not happen all over all at once. As the system reaches normal pressures and as it's stabilized and as we test, we can bring certain areas on early and other areas on as we fix.
Do you have a number of businesses or residences that are without water or power at this time? Any kind of figure you can give us?
Well, with power this morning, I think there was a total of 27 individuals without power, but that has fluctuated up and down. Those are all individual outages. As you know, there's still no shortage of vehicles that run into our power poles and cause an outage, or trees that fall. That's typically what those are. Those are individual service drops. There is no system-wide power outages at this point. For water, as the mayor said, we estimated, and we also wanted to be conservative, that what we were seeing is up to 15% of the folks that did not either have water or had very low water pressure. I can't give you an accurate count because, again, people in the areas with no water knew they didn't have it and their neighbors didn't have it, so they weren't calling in. It's hard to get a good assessment of that, but that's the best I have for you now. After this is over, we'll try to get an analysis to see how many were affected.
This is the second time in 3 winters that MLGW has had a boil advisory. How should this just be a resident expectation when things dip below freezing for a certain amount of time, or are there investments that can be made that maybe this doesn't happen with every deep freeze?
That's a really good question, Sam, and thanks for asking it. No, I mean, at the end of the day, you all rely on us to deliver you clean, stable, reasonably priced energy, also reliable, clean, fresh water that's the best in the country, and to have gas when and where you need it. That is the expectation. I'm accountable for giving that to you all, and you're right. It's the second time in 3 years, but it's also the second time in decades that we've had to do that. So it's a recent phenomenon. We do have aging infrastructure. As you know, I believe 4 years ago there was a rate increase requested for MLGW. That rate increase had nothing to do with operations. It had everything to do with having money to invest in our infrastructure. So I'll harken back. For our water infrastructure, we started at the source. It does me little good to have a distribution system that's reliable if my wells and pump stations aren't reliable. So we started there, and that's where we made those investments that allow us to crank up the pressure to get more water into the system. We are moving on to the distribution system here. No, you should not expect it. Now, practically, could it happen again in the next year or two? I would be a fool to say that that's not a possibility. But we understand what the risks are. We understand what we have to do.
Doug, would you speak to the health risks of drinking water without boiling it? And also, neighboring West Memphis across the river experienced the same freeze that we did. Why are they
Sure. I'll address two issues. Number one, the boil water, the health risks there. It is a precautionary water boil. It's not because, as you've seen in some other cities where we know there's something wrong with the water. As we test it, we know there's nothing that's detected in the water. It is a regulation because there is a risk downstream if water pressure goes to zero or very low that you could have some infiltration. So that's why we put that boil water in. Obviously, it's at the end of the day, what the risk is just like drinking water out of a stream that's untreated. You know, there's all kinds of bacteria that could get into the system, but we haven't detected that today. As to the randomness of where this happens and what cities are affected, I do want to say many large cities are experiencing this in the South. I think the mayor just talked about it. We've talked to our friends in Nashville. They're having identical issues to us, even though they have a much smaller system than ours. But they're having the identical issues that we're having there. And so I think it's the age of the system. As you know, much of our water infrastructure is more than 100 years old. Our forefathers were wise enough to invest in a really robust water system. That cuts both ways, though. It's very old, and we need to make investments in that infrastructure. I'm not sure the age of West Memphis's infrastructure.
For those without water, I talk to people at your giveaways, they're down to like 6 bottled water, stores are closed. What's your message to them? I know there's concern, I know you all are working, if you could speak to them, what's your message?
Well, again, there is room for optimism. I'm thankful for all the friends and neighbors who, as the mayor talked about, came to their neighbors' aid and put people up at their homes, helped deliver water there. So I think Memphians and Shelby Countyans helping each other is something that we should all be thankful for. The room for optimism that we are pushing water out, you should expect to get it here shortly. We understand that you don't have it right now. And you may be down some bottled water, but we do have some available to you. And as you heard the mayor talk about, we are providing some non-potable for you to be able to use for the forced flushes in your commodes. So I understand that there is still some concerns out there for folks, and it's never a good thing to have to be without water. So I hope I answered it, Brad.
And so you, with your timeline, you think it could be about a week, around a week until it's all back to normal? I know you were kind of giving.
Well, I think since we've started, we said it's a few days. I think we're pretty close to having found the leaks and fixed the leaks. So obviously that's a work that we have to do and private property owners have to do. And so we're in that couple of days to get that stabilized, a couple of days to get back up and operating. So before we're out of the boil water advisory.
Like 5 days?
I'm not going to commit to a specific number of days and hours, but yes, sir.
Now, you mentioned earlier about some parts of the city, the pressure's higher than others, which also kind of goes into with people using their bathrooms and hot water and flushing. Some places you can't flush at all or use their bathrooms. So what do you suggest to people whose home doesn't have enough pressure for them to use their bathroom or to take a hot shower? What do you suggest to people like in the city?
Sure. Well, that's where friends and neighbors come in, and that's where the opportunity to have non-potable water for the flushing. So it's not adequate for bathing, but we do have friends and neighbors. We have a number of facilities around, and it's never an easy thing, but I would ask people to think about how they might be able to help each other in this time. We have various gyms around the community that do have shower provisions and various nonprofits who may be able to offer that. So I don't have a ready answer because I can't deliver showers and non-potable water to every home, but we're asking neighbors to help neighbors here.
If I could,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
with respect to the flushing, that's the program that we announced earlier, our partnership with Shelby County Health Department. It's going to start today, I think, at 1 o'clock at the Hickory Hill Community Center. 1 o'clock, Hickory Hill Community Center. You can pick up that water not to drink. It's only to use in toilets to flush.
Final question for Doug. We saw car washes operating. Are they using recycled water? And are you verifying if they're
Yes.
recycling that?
So that's a good question. One thing that has not come up until this point is we actually do have authority as the regulatory body over local water use to curtail businesses who use a significant amount of water. Our enforcement teams have been out asking the car washes to please suspend operations. And I would ask the citizenry to say, I understand how inconvenient it is to have a dirty car. I also understand that because you probably were driving, your windshield is now coated and maybe your windshield washers aren't working. if you can do whatever you can to avoid washing your car, we're asking. They do have some recycling, but they have to refill those reservoirs, so we're asking them not to do that. We see that as a nice to have at this point in time rather than a requirement.
Because we saw one on Crumb just operating like normal. Are they
Sure.
violating your order? Have you told them to stop?
Sure, and I would suggest that that is not unusual. We have, as Mayor Strickland and Ms. Ryan know, we have a lot of ordinances in the city that people disregard. So I'm not surprised that somebody would disregard the ordinance. I would just ask that people willingly comply with this to help their friends and neighbors. You know, the same folks that are operating there, the same folks that are getting their car washed, their friends and neighbors are suffering from lack of water. So let's do what we can to avoid using water unnecessarily until we're back up and operating.
Doug, do you have that number on how many local businesses are still affected by the boil water advisory, for example, restaurants?
Sure. Well, so everybody's affected by the boil water advisory. So I realize that makes a difference. If you have a restaurant that has a soda fountain, for instance, you can't offer that water because you can't boil it before you put it in. So that has an impact on them. For other, mostly drinking, that's an issue. But for folks that use water for cooking, as long as they boil it, they should be okay.
If there's a specific outage with the hotels as they're getting ready for the Liberty Bowl, any water distribution specifically to hotels?
Well, we have been in touch with the Hotel Motel Association here, and they are coming together to work to make sure that people coming to town have a place to lay their head when they come to either to the game tomorrow or the game tonight. So they're working together. There has been a number of efforts to make sure that their guests have drinkable water, and that if they can't accommodate them, that other people are stepping up and saying they'll take them on. So yes.
Circling back to an earlier question, the bills, there's probably no people with catastrophic bills that would be enough that would require any assistance in your view, correct? That's the people have been conserving.
Well, that's a pretty general statement. So yes, there are always people that have bills that are incredibly high for some reason, but not because of the pipes bursting. And so we'll obviously make an adjustment should that be necessary.
Okay, Sam.
Yeah, sorry. For Chief Ryan or the mayor, has there been any issue with any of the water treatment plants, the wastewater treatment plants thus far?
No, we don't have any issues at our treatment plants. We're running fine.
Just to clarify one thing, MLGW is giving out bottled water today at the Hickory Ridge Mall. The water for the toilets is being given out at the Hickory Hill Community Center.
That starts at 1, maybe?
Yes. I'm sorry, I cut you off, I'm sorry.
How many customers does MLGW have total? And your 15% number earlier, is that how many people are without water?
Yeah, so now you're testing me. 431,000 electric customers. We have fewer than that with water because, as you know, Bartlett and Germantown and Collierville have their own water systems. So, Gail, do you remember how many water customers we have off the top of your head? How many water customers exactly? Yeah, I think it's in the high 200,000 range. So, and when I say 15%, that is either without water or being impacted by low water pressure. So
about 30,000 households without water or low water pressure.
that, based on the 15%, that would be, that's probably the best estimate I can give you.
You mentioned about restaurants with the water, so is it suggesting that restaurants possibly got to go back to serving canned and bottled water for their drinks?
Sure. Yes, so bottled water is appropriate because they wouldn't be able to do fountain drinks. If they have table water, as long as they boil it ahead of time, it would be fine to serve that way.
Okay, last questions? Everybody have a good meeting?
Just real quick, when it comes to hotels, and I know you touched on this a little bit, have they been experiencing any problems with water pressure in general?
Yes. Yes. And so that's been pretty clear from the beginning. I want to just, this is a little bit of a technical issue here, but your home, the plumbing system in your home just needs some water pressure in order to fill the tank, and then you flush and gravity does the rest. The issue with commercial, and the reason we ask folks to stay home, is that there's a valve in there. One of the common brand names is called a Sloan valve, and that needs a minimum of 40 pounds per square inch in order to work. So everybody understands when you flush at the office, it's a much louder whooshing sound. That's because there's pressure behind that. If there's not 40 pounds of pressure, then those valves won't work. And that's what's happening in the hotels and in businesses and in hospitals where there's large commercial, commodes that people are using. That's the technical reason why they're not working. You can't, not like home where you could fill up the tank in the back and then flush. There's no provision to be able to do that in a commercial setting. So I appreciate y'all, and thank you all for doing a good job of getting the word out there for us. I appreciate the coverage, appreciate the attention, and thank you all for helping to get the word to people who need it.
One last statement about the water. If citizens can bring their own jugs, we're still waiting on Home Depot to deliver the jugs. We don't have them right now, but they can bring old milk cartons, things like that, milk jugs, so that we can get some water.
Is this yours?